End this term, it's had manifold repercussions for the country. It's caused deep anger amongst its people above all.
It certainly has, and this is the only country in West Africa that's never had a military coup, which is quite extraordinary when you know what's gone on across the continent. It's got a very, very robust democracy, but opposition leaders have been saying that that reputation is now under threat thanks to President Wade seeking this third term. And those who've worked for the leader say that his electoral conflict is very much rooted in his penchant for frequently reshuffling his cabinet ministers. I think the latest tally was around 200 or
That's
so.
Extraordinary.
Yeah. But not to mention concerns over the fact that there was some sort of tinkering with the country's constitution and a lot of revising of unrealised development plans. But at this point, I want to bring in our guest, Douglas Yates, an Africa specialist from the American University here in Paris and a frequent guest here on France 24. Douglas, thanks for being with us. How is the President expected to do in this weekend's poll? And is there concern, if indeed that he does get in, that we're going to see even more unrest?
Well, despite the fact that there is great opposition to him in the country, and that includes unprecedented riots in the streets, the kinds of things you never see in Senegal, there is actual electoral support for him that he's constructed. One of the things that people need to understand about Senegal is that although it's an Islamic country, it has a very particular kind of Islam, Sufi Islam, which is organized around marabout. These are sort of holy men, teachers, and they organize confrérie or brotherhoods and give people jobs, make decisions about family and marriage, and also direct people whom to vote for. So one of the major campaign strategies of any presidential candidate is to get the support of large Sufi brotherhoods. And President Wade is a member of the largest, the Mouride Brotherhood, and he still has their support. So there's a very large chunk of voters there. Another is he's managed to go around and distribute some of this development money. Senegal's the #1 aid recipient in West Africa. There's a lot of aid and development money. And he can give this out piecemeal to village big men in exchange for votes. And then, of course, there's his own party machine, the PDS. These people have political careers and they're going to support him. So he can probably get about 40% just on that solid base of support. And what he needs is about 10 or 15% for elsewhere. The way he got it in the last election is one of the other candidates from the first round, in order to get cabinet posts, gave his support to Wade. So it's quite possible that if only one of the other major opposition candidates supports him in the second round, Wade can win.
That would be enough. Now, you mentioned there about getting the Sufis on side. What about the Christians, and to what extent are we seeing the protest movement sort of factionalized along religious lines?
Well, I've been seeing some articles that have been making reference to this. Typically, Senegal has a very, very moderate form of Sufi Islam. And one of the threats that's been coming out of West Africa is with increased poverty, profound poverty. This country, half of the country's living in poverty, and a massive youth who are susceptible to proselytism. There's a possibility of making people extreme Islamic activist supporters. There have been some cries of youth in the capital city in the protests that sound like extremist cries of Allah Akbar, but my general analysis is that this is not a country that's yet going towards extreme or Islamism. That is, it remains a Sufi country, but the youth are susceptible.
Now, the political opposition is very much divided and has really failed to put forward a single inspiring candidate. And of course, we saw the famous singer Youssou N'Dour, his plans being thwarted to run as a candidate by the courts. But despite all this, is the opposition going to be able to muster enough support to do well in Sunday's poll?
Well, some of the opposition has been spending its campaign time asking President Wade to step down from power. Unfortunately, that might be their campaign. That is, what the opposition might have in common is that they are opposed to the leader. Some of the others, however, do have programs. There is the classic Socialist Party candidate, the Socialist Party, which ruled this country for 40 years, does have a platform, does have a party machine, does have members in parliament, and they're obviously well organized. but some of the other groups don't have any clear platform. One of the ideas with Ndore's campaign, and the reason that it was stopped, was less that he stood a chance of winning the election, and more that because he was such a celebrity, the international community would have brought its cameras in. Clearly, the one thing Wad doesn't want is precisely what's happening this morning, attention being placed on his third-term election.
Douglas, thank you so much for being with us, and obviously we'll be following that election this weekend, so Frans van Kat will be watching that indeed very
online
closely.
as well as on our 3 channels. And just a reminder, Annette, if we want to follow you on Twitter to get updates about Senegal and everything else that you tweet on, where should we go?
You can follow me at Annette F24, and please tweet.
Thank you very much to both of my guests, and that brings us to the end of Top Story. Moving on to other world news now, and the gloves are off. At the top of Australian politics, former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd has confirmed that he will indeed challenge his successor, Premier Julia Gillard, for leadership of the Labour Party. He resigned as Foreign Minister on Wednesday amid speculation he was planning to seize power. Rudd says he was betrayed by Gillard, who ousted him in 2010 following fallouts over his policies and controversial leadership style. Gillard, who maintains that Monday's ballot is not a popularity poll, looks set to win the party vote, though Rudd remains better liked by the public.
I'm not prepared to stand idly by and see our great nation's future wasted by an Abbott-led government. If things don't change on Monday, I'm convinced that will be a certainty. So let me be clear. If we don't change, the Labor Party is going to end up in opposition. We will all end up on the backbench, not just one, and the opposition backbench at that. That's the cold, hard, stark reality that we face.
Let's bring you now a reminder of our top stories here on Live from Paris. Kofi Annan is the UN's man on Syria. The body names its former leader, Special